much for having me here. And like what Mr. Gana said, I just would love to share some thoughts and best practices on this subject of firstly Agile. I'm just so very passionate about Agile and how it's manifested using Jira. So this is a high level session. So in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so, I just hope to share some of these things with you. Now, just a quick background for the benefit of those who have been knowing me for the first time. Yes, as Mr. Gana said, I've been with Taylors for some years. During this time, I was actively managing projects, mainly software projects, of course, because that's my background. The last 6 years, I was actively involved in project management. I do a lot of training, particularly on the Agile Certified Practitioner offered by PMI, Agile Masterclass, Fundamentals, and Agile using Jira and Trello. I do consulting bit, especially for those who want to assimilate these best practices in their custom environment. So we need to connect to their company and their processes. And of course, I do coaching because I find that after the training, sometimes the teams do need extra help. So that's where the coaching hat comes in. The company Agile Management Consultancy was set up in 2016. And this year in March, I was appointed Atlassian Community Leader. So that's exciting. So I've been doing some sharing. In fact, I think you must have got the YouTube link. I believe it was shared to all, right, Gana? I think so. I think it was sent to all of you.
We shared the whole link and
right.
presentation you did the other day.
Yeah, so that was my first session in my capacity as Atlassian Community Leader for Malaysia. So I do these sessions every now and then, and I invite speakers from Atlassian to come and talk to our community here in KL. All right, so just moving forward, I just want to talk about this important slide. It's called the Agile Onion, pretty much looking like an onion, right? So it's like, you know, you have all the little circles coming up. But what it really means is that, you know, when you talk about Jira, Jira is just a tool, right? It just sits right down there. But what overlaps the tool is the whole idea of your mindset. And a mindset is nothing but a set of values, principles, and practices all built in together. So in the course of my consulting, I have many times seen people rushing into the tool, not understanding and embracing the mindset. And I have to say that these projects have not done very well. So it's not always the tool, but it's embracing the mindset, the Agile mindset, that is very important. So obviously we will, I want to just quickly break here and do a quick poll, just to understand something from all of you before I proceed. Can you see this poll on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it possible to click anything?
Yes.
Okay, please do if you can. That will give me an idea of what exposure the team has.
What tool you're using for the polling?
It's a built-in tool in Zoom.
Oh, wow.
But you've got to have a paid version for that. Yeah, it comes together with that.
Okay, have everyone?
I think there's just 2 more left. Okay. Brilliant. 1 more to go. I see as much as 71% do not have any formal training on Jira, 14% perhaps, and 1%, which is about 14%, said you have had some training. So I think this is very important an observation because, like I said, the training gives you the understanding, that's one thing, but embracing the mindset is something else. So I think perhaps, Gana, moving forward, it's my suggestion, if it works out, to probably have a short session with the whole team so that everybody's aligned with these mindset of Agile. So that's my quick
Sure.
takeaway. All right, so let's move on. Now, I just want to throw in some useful statistics here. This is a statistics I think was published last year. And it said, obviously, this is a US statistics. 71% of companies are already adopting Agile. So as you have rightly said, Ghana, the old way in which we have done work, the waterfall approach is seemingly not so effective now. Although I do know of people who have adopted both the hybrid method, and that seems to work fine for them. 98% of companies and huge losses because of failed projects not using the right methodology, growth in profits, and the failure rate in Agile is actually 8%, and that's actually quite good if you ask me. And if you know the typical failure rate of IT projects, it's actually at least 3 to 4 times more than that. When I mean it's failure, it's because the scope is not met, it's over budget, and it's exceeded the time. So that's the classification of failure. So just a quick overview of what are we talking about. Now, here you see a slide of all the Agile flavors. Think of Agile as Android, right? You've got Samsung having Android, you've got Sony having Android, you've got O2, whatever. But they all have a slight change to their flavor, but it's basically just Android. And here you look at Scrum being the most popular version of it. And I think it makes a lot of sense because most companies are using Scrum. Yes, we do have Kanban or Scrumban, which I think is very interesting because you have the benefit of the lean approach with Scrum. Now we're talking about Kanplan, which is not on the list. That's another hybrid approach. Now why I'm showing you this, because sometimes it's so important to adapt to what you're already doing. And sometimes Scrum may not fit entirely. So to have the understanding of the variety of methods used becomes important. Now, coming back to the traditional and Agile approach, we have obviously the Agile bit talks about sprints, talks about daily stand-up, which you guys are doing very well. It obviously talks about your product backlog. Are you doing your product backlog grooming? A lot of people have backlog, but they don't do backlog grooming because they don't actively prioritize and they don't actively relook at their issues from time to time. So your backlog becomes very static, but that's ideally not the case. We should have it actively managed, as opposed to the traditional approach, which is the big bang. And surely we're not talking about that here. Now, moving swiftly, before I move on, are we good so far? Am I going okay with speed?
Yeah, everything is okay.
Okay, so since this is Agile, we need to do a bit of retrospective, right? So I need to check. I need to do a bit of retrospective and check with everybody if it's fine. Now, do show any thumbs up or whatever if you need any, clarification. If you want to post something on chat, please do.
Guys, are you all
good, guys?
Yeah. Good, because I really don't know if you all are going through the slides or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
All good.
I'm good. Yeah, all good as well.
All right, brilliant. Not to worry, because I will make it available for everyone later on in case you miss something out. Not a problem.
Okay, cool.
So the next bit, we have the Agile tool. I mean, seriously, what is a good tool? What is a good Agile tool? There's so many tools out there. Now, to me, it is a tool that has to unify the team. Now, the tool that does not unify the team is not a good tool. Whether it's tracking, whether it's collaborating and delivering outcomes. And the tool has to be customized. And I've seen umpteen cases of people even using Jira and just using out of the shelf without any form of customization. And that's horrible, I'll tell you that much. The tool will not work for you. So it has to be customized. It has to be scaled for your needs. And the best part of all, the tool has to serve as a single point of truth. There's no point having Jira and then maintaining your Excel versions and then having variety of sources of sort of truth, and you will be lost. That serves no purpose. Absolutely. So that's what I think a good tool should serve. Now, the slide you're seeing now is a range of products. I mean, I'm just throwing this out because I just wanted this session to be educational as well. So you know that there are loads of tools that you have under Atlassian. A lot of companies use a combination of Slack, Jira, and Confluence. Slack is to manage their channels and all their communication. And then they have the Confluence bit, which they have their requirements being iterated and groomed. And then all of that gets into your product backlog. So, well, for our intents and purposes, perhaps we may not want that extension. We can use Jira alone, which is actually quite good, and to do most of these things. But just keep in mind that, there are loads of other things when you get into testing and you get into deployment and get into loads of other work management. There are other tools that can actually do some help for you. Right, so now let's get into Jira proper. Now, again, I want to share here, there are many other alternatives. Although Mr. Ghana did mention earlier that we are looking at Jira, but I also want to bring to your attention, there are many others. And some of you have used tools like, I've used Asana, I've used Trello, GitHub to some extent, but really there are many options. But if you ask me, and if you're seriously into some real work which is seamless and powerful with customization, with reporting features and advanced dashboards, please just go for Jira. I mean, I'm biased to say this, but I think this is what the industry is even saying.
Dr. Sanat, these are all other products available for project management tool.
Yeah, that's right.
DevOps is also a product name, is it?
Yeah, DevOps is, you have Azure DevOps, where when you have the Microsoft suite, typically, like I was talking to BP the other day, last Sunday, the guys are saying, we can't use Jira because, in BP, we have a suite of Microsoft products.
Oh,
so obviously for them, they're not going to move to Jira, right? So they're going to use the Azure DevOps.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. But like I said, some of them are not really project management tools like Bugzilla. They are really for bug tracking and so on.
Got it.
Right. So in terms of Jira, I think we're looking at Jira Cloud. It serves brilliantly. Obviously, some organizations, they want the whole thing to be protected and they go for the data center bit. But I think for our purpose, our intents and purposes, Jira Cloud will do an amazing job. Like I was talking to Ghana the other day, Jira allows you up to 10 persons at no cost. The only caveat that is that in the 10 persons plan, you actually don't have the hierarchy of levels. That means you don't have the Jira administrator level, which becomes useful when you have a project management office, right? Because you have the Jira administrator, you've got the project administrator, and then you have the teams. The levels become very useful when you scale. Otherwise, all features are there, even for the free version. So that's something we can tinker about a bit later as we decide. Now, a quick thought through. I think some of you have seen the slide when I shared earlier. The word Jira has come about with, Atlassian named the product after Jira. And because they were already using a bug tracking software called Bugzilla, which actually still exists. So that name evolved from there. So you call it Jira now. Okay, that's the history to it. So yeah, so this is the hierarchy I was talking about. You could be like, for example, Kenny, Kenny, you could be a Jira administrator and you could also become the project administrator.
Mm.
But technically speaking, that's fine if you're just managing one project. But what if you have many projects running concurrently? So then you want someone sitting higher up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone in the PMO office looking at that sort of configuration, setting all the... You see, what happens to Jira is that Jira is just it's just a plain instance. And it's quite clever, I would say, but you have to customize the language to suit your company, right? So that customization of language that suits Metora or Cloud IoT Analytics is what you will be doing as a Jira administrator. And then the project administrator will manifest this language. When I say language, the terms, the terminology, the workflow. So you decide these things beforehand. And then whoever comes on and do a project, they will inherit the same workflow, the same language, the same scheme. They use the word scheme in Jira. So I don't want to throw in too much of jargons here, but sufficient to impress you that these are the levels and why you need them over time. Right. Next.
Basically, Dr. Sanat, can
Sure.
you go?
Sure.
So, remember we were talking yesterday. So one
Sure.
Jira pack comes with 10 user, 10 named user.
Yeah.
So Kenny will be one user, Ghana will be one user, Mehdi will be one user.
Yep.
So site administrator means managing the entire Jira instance.
Yeah. Site administrator is like someone sitting at the highest level, just creating accounts.
Okay. Okay.
So if you have like a cloud thing, you don't really have a site administrator lah, because you start off with the Jira administrator who starts creating accounts.
Okay. The Jira that we are getting is cloud-based, right?
Yes, it is cloud-based.
So I don't need a PC, a computer to install, nothing.
Absolutely not. You don't need a server set up at your end.
Okay, so it is cloud-based. So the site administrator and Jira administrator could be someone like the
Precisely.
and the project administrator would be someone who's handling the project. In this case, could be FNN or Asahi.
Yes.
And then what is the last one? My screen. Team members are
The
all
team.
model builders.
That's right. And even in the team, you have many levels, right? You've got someone who can actually move the issues between boards. You give this guy special permission, and you have supervisors who have a different level of seniority, so he can actually make modification to the issues. So that it gets a bit more complex than that. But I'm just putting to you a very, simplistic view of things.
Kenny, how many of us are there in Metora now? Or Elena, do you know how many of us?
I can't say for sure, I guess.
11 or 12. I mean,
11 or 12,
I mean, like if it is including intern, would be more than that.
Okay. So, sorry, Dr. Sana, just go ahead. I'm just
Sure,
trying.
no worries.
As you explain, I'm trying to think how we're going to deploy that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I suppose maybe we start with the free instance, and then as the team becomes more familiar, then we can decide whether we want to scale up.
Got it.
Brilliant. All right, just to move on in the interest of time, I just want to share that I was talking to you about the various methodologies in Agile, right? And you'll be pleased to know that Jira supports all of them. And I personally am a fan of mixed methodologies because I always feel that sometimes you want the best of two worlds. So you really want to know how do you mix, for example, Kanban that talks about optimizing and minimizing wastage against Scrum that talks about periodic short time cycles. And because of the short time cycles, you get to release frequently and your customer gets to give you feedback frequently and you deliver more frequently. So you have the benefit of Scrum that does that, Kanban looking at optimizing and reducing wastage. You then have mixed methodologies that do the both. An example of that would be Scrumban and Kanplan. Okay, so again, I don't want to get into that so much details, but just sufficient to share with you that when we start to do a bit of work internally, when I start to help the teams, we are able to then decide what's the best methodology moving forward. Kana, you're saying something?
No.
Okay, all right, brilliant. All right, so let me just quickly get into the demo part. I did not intend this session to be, getting into all the features, but sufficient to show some of them and why they are very important to understand. Remember, Agile, Jira is very adaptive. And the best thing I like about Jira is that you can start with a template that closely matches your project requirements. And Jira has loads of them, depending on which industry, whether it's legal, whether it's finance, whether it's operation, whether it's HR. In fact, somebody asked me the other day, can we do even audit work using Jira? And actually, it's possible. Now, let me just quickly switch my screen. Not there. So yes, I was talking to you about all that. Let's look at the first bit. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
see my Jira instance?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you can tell from here I have a paid instance because AMC is the company I own, Agile Management Consultancy, AMC, right? So I have a dedicated instance because I'm a paid user. So what you see here is a list of projects that I've been either testing or being involved in. So there you have loads of them. And here, what I want to show you is that the create project bit, and this is the part I love so much. And when you're doing software development, you can decide what you're looking at. And for example, if you're looking at Scrum, the suggested issue types would be either epic, story, bug, task, subtask. So Ghana, you were saying the other day, I think when we spoke, there, I think in the Excel file that you showed me, there's something else that we can probably add here. Say, for instance, you can add new requests coming in.
Yep.
Right? That's not one of the issue types. So therefore, this is where we need to configure the issue types to map the needs of the project. Are you seeing where I'm coming from?
Yes, yes. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. So because you have very specific needs, right? I know like in some projects, they have a lot of procurement going on. So they have a new issue called new procurement,
Okay.
which is not in the default setting when you configure a Scrum template that is in Jira. So you have to do a bit of customization, right? So this is where we help you. I'll help you with all of that, not a problem.
Dr. Sanat,
So,
take a
sure.
step back. I mean, maybe you want to explain what is Scrum first to the consultants. Then are we only going to use Scrum?
No, I think that is best.
Scrum and
Yeah,
Kanban.
I was just thinking maybe that's best left to another session where we can go into the details of it. But it's really a very important point you brought up because seriously, as much as I love Jira, but I'm not a fan of it being used without the team having a very good knowledge of these things.
Okay.
All right. So coming back to this again, you see that there are loads of other things. When you're doing IT service management, can you see the service request types? You have loads of them. Get IT help, fix an account problem, whatever. These are suggested ones, obviously. They've done their own survey and market research to know that these are the typical service request types. Whether it's work management, whether it's marketing, whether it's human resource, good Lord, you have a whole lot of them. Whether even new employee onboarding, that's really interesting, right? You can even use that Jira to manage that, the whole onboarding process. And this is what I want to share. When I got into the Atlassian community, I was onboarded the same way. 6 months, I was put into a Jira tracking Kanban plan. So I was able to see where I am at now. Once I'm done, I move my issue to the in progress, done, and so on and so forth. So even I went through that onboarding process using Jira. Then you have many things, right? Design, whatsoever, personal. You can even use it for your personal work. Task tracking, interesting. When you look at task tracking, right? The workflow is so simple, right? You have just either to do or done, right? That's really about it. All right. So that is what I really wanted to share with you. Let's go back to the slides. Are we good so far?
So far,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So this is how the Jira tool looks like, right?
Yes, that's right. That's precisely what it is.
So templates already is already there, like human resource, finance.
Yeah, that is what I was trying to tell you.
Uh,
You really have templates that are close to uh, your business case or the project that you're in.
yep.
So that leaves you little headache to try and do too much configuration. And what I wanted to also share with you, I don't know if you have program managers. Do you have program managers managing multiple projects?
No, we are not that big yet, but
Okay.
that's what we are achieving to do next, where Tenny can manage multiple projects.
Yes. So if that is the case, Jenny, you'll be very pleased to know. Typically, of course, you have one board. One board is like a dashboard, right? You have one project, one dashboard for one project. But with some form of customization, remember Jira has its own query language. You have the JQL, Jira query language. With this query built in, you can have a board manifesting many projects.
Mm.
So that becomes useful. And you might say, Dr. Sana, that's too much for me. That's too overwhelming. I can't be seeing every issues. Now it gets cleverer than that. You can start tracking issues that are coming close or lapse or within a certain time frame to the deadline or whatsoever that you want, and only view those information that is pertinent to you at that point in time. So all this can be done with the Jira query language. Right. Now let me move on to the next bit, which is the team management part. Now, I don't know how much, I know you have used Jira. Some project team members have used Jira in the FNN project, right, Mr. Gana?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So
But how
if there's
much, I don't know. Maybe, are you
yeah,
really logging on to Jira in FNN?
yeah, that's what I want to know. It's a good question.
Yes, Ken. I'm using Jira. I'm logging into Jira.
Oh, so you are a Jira user and you are logging in the areas that you are responsible, the sprints that you are responsible for.
When I log in, I see all the sprints in the project.
Okay.
I can see all the issues in all the project.
Okay. Do you move issues when you're done? Do you do that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you create issues?
Sorry?
Do you create issues from time to time?
I can create tickets. I can move them
Ticket.
in the stage, and I can remove. No, I cannot remove, but I can move them into the other stages.
Right. Okay, very good. So what has happened is actually in probably this case, the team has actually created a role for you. And do you know what that role is that you have been assigned?
I really don't know what is the role. I can check.
Okay, never mind. It's okay. Now, what I think is very important is that you may have a specific role in the company, right? And everybody in the company has that role. So you might want to create these role types in Jira. And you see, this is so important because the Jira instance has to closely reflect the role that you're playing in the company. So this is important. So that is why in Jira you have various roles. You can create these roles on the fly and map these roles with your team members and accord the appropriate permission levels to them. For example, I think Mehdi said he could create tickets and he could move issues, but he may be limited to only a certain type of tickets. He probably cannot create other issue types. So this is where we need to be very clear who in the team will be allowed to create types and who in the team are allowed to even change the issue type. Sorry, I beg my pardon. who is allowed to make modification to the issue itself. Now, I'm using some buzzwords here. So let me rewind a bit. What is an issue? An issue is a piece of requirement. And you cannot allow anyone to make modification to an issue because that alters the scope of the project and that changes a lot of things, right? So therefore, these are little intricate things that needs to be built in the Jira instance. And the last thing you want is to have anyone messing up, your instance because of these rules not being clearly outlined. So what I'm showing you here, if you can see my screen, I have like these roles that I already created in my Jira instance. Because I'm the Jira administrator, I'm logged in as a Jira administrator, I have these roles. So you can obviously create specific roles and later on through the global permission settings, make certain modifications. For example, the ones who can browse, the ones who can share your dashboard and filters, who are they? The ones who can manage your subscription, the one can make bulk changes, the one who can, do whatever, so you can actually create this specific permission level scheme for the roles that you want. So I hope I'm not getting unnecessary technical for this presentation, but I just wanted to impress this part of it. Right. So moving to the third typical workflow is what I love most. It's really about managing the workflow, right? So whether you use Scrum, like Ghana, you said earlier, right? You wanted me to explain about Scrum. Scrum is really the idea of your project being dissected in sprints. So think of a project that is so large, having various sprints where your deliverables and outcomes are managed in bite sizes, right? In bite sizes. And therefore, you ideally plan a little, you design a little, you code or model a little, and you deliver in small chunks. And the benefit of that is your customers get to see some outcome really early and give you that feedback. And you have now the opportunity to make changes as opposed to making the big changes in the waterfall. It's like a big bang and you probably just wasted so much time if you had known something earlier. So that is in the nutshell what Scrum is trying to do. Obviously, there are much more than that. And Kanban is also very interesting. And I love to incorporate Kanban in Scrum boards because it encourages a very good flow of operational work. And that makes DevOps very popular in a way because DevOps talks about operations and development work, right? Because operations tends to be continuous, so Kanban becomes useful. Now, whatever said and done, at the end of the day, you have a board. Now, the board that you see here, it's a disaster, right? And I have seen companies having boards like this that have absolutely no benefit. It's too cluttered, it's not configured, it's not filtered. But what you want is a board that is looking like this, that has better representation of timeliness and essentialness in what you do, right? So this is again another element of customization in Jira. And in fact, I would go on to say that different people in the project can actually see different boards. Because, why would I want to see something to do with the testing when testing is not my area of work? So again, it becomes so important for the project administrator to ensure that these boards becomes useful to the team. Otherwise, what happens is your Jira instance will become, like a white elephant. I've seen that happening in other places. So yeah, so technically speaking, whichever method you're using, whether it's Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban, Kanban, you have all these features. And it's really important to ensure that happens. Now, I talked about issues earlier on, and issues are nothing but work. And the work can be anything under the sun. It can be a feature request. It can be a bug. It can be a user story. It can be a piece of documentation. It can be anything. So Jira uses the word issue to represent that. And like I was talking to you earlier, these issues are up to you to decide. Like, for example, Ghana, we were talking about new feature earlier, right? Like you have a new request coming in. Where would that come under a new request? Because a new request is also work that the team needs to do. So then if I look at my list of existing issue types, I don't have a new request as a list of issue types. So I need to create a user story called new request, for example. You could even consider that as a new feature, but a feature is not the same as a request, actually. There's some difference. So therefore, coming to the point, I'm trying to tell you the business requirement has to be clearly understood. So this is where someone like the product owner, I'm not sure whether you have the role of a product owner in the company. Do you?
No, we don't have a product owner.
Okay. Now, I suppose you have someone who does, who would be the one dealing with the stakeholders and actively understanding and discussing, engaging time to time?
Team leads.
Team lead. Okay. So this team lead is technically speaking the product owner. So this team lead has to clearly understand various business requirements and map this closely enough to the Jira instance. Hope I'm making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the Jira administrator I was talking to you about, this is the guy or the person, in this case it's you, Kenny, right? You're going to do these things. You're going to create the various issue types for your company. And you will probably not allow anybody to just create arbitrarily whatever issue type they like, because that will be quite a mess, right? So this custom creation of issue types becomes very important. And each issue type will have a workflow. For example, if you say is a new request, it comes to you, and what next? Does it get validated first? Yes, perhaps. Then what happens? Does it get designed? Does it get worked on? And is there a QC involved? And then it's done. So all this workflow built into each and every issue type has to be clearly mapped out, because that is what you want. That's the workflow that you follow. Now, I have a caution here. Do not create unnecessary workflow if you don't need them. So sometimes these workflows are just waste of time, and Agile do not prescribe that. But if you think, in the company, yes, we have this sort of workflow, it's so important, it's so integral to what we do, then please map that workflow into Jira. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right. So all these workflows, the issue types, you can configure the workflow, and I wouldn't want to go that in interest of time. And you can move the hierarchy and so on and so forth. And the last bit of how we typically use Jira is what I love most. And I think project managers love this. And for example, if Mr. Ghana is not actively updating the Jira, but he may love this feature, because with a click of a few buttons, in fact, just one button, in fact, he will be able to see various useful reports. And the common reports that people use are these things that you see. We got sprint burn down report. Obviously, the graph should go down, right? Now, for whatever reason, you see over time that it reaches a plateau. It's not going down to zero, which means the work is actually not finishing. And that means something to Mr. Ghana, that is, hey, this team is accepting new requests, new requirements, and that is why the project is not finishing. Or the team has overlooked some requirements and new requirements keep adding in. That's why the graph is not hitting zero. So whatever the reason may be, the burn down chart is very useful. Right? So these are what we typically use. The indicators that give you some information. And obviously you have your epic release. Now, sometimes you have to measure your project not by sprints, by epic, right? Epics are broad functionalities. So if you know what an epic is, it's like a huge set of functionalities grouped together. That's an epic. So you can map your project according to epics and then tell them, okay, phase 1 is going to be done by this time. So someone can actually track the whole project by epics to see how we're going by the releases. Right? So sorry, I'm throwing a lot of buzzwords here, but that's what it really means. So these indicators will give you useful information. And you also have velocity report. I love velocity. Why? Because velocity tells teams productivity rate. And it's a measure of how productive the team is going on over time. Now, it's a caveat because sometimes I know companies using this chart to say, hey, you guys are not doing well this round. Last round, you can do more. This sprint, you're doing less. I think that's really bad to do that sort of comparison. The reason being, one word, estimation. You have poorly estimated your scope and the work that needs to be done. And because of the poor estimation, you're doing so slow, but actually you're doing a lot more because the estimation was wrong. So that is why I was trying to talk to some of you earlier. I mentioned earlier, it's so important to learn the fundamentals of Agile and how do you estimate well? Because if you don't estimate well, your reports are not going to be useful. Because let me just put it this way, Jira is just, it's kind of dumb, right? It's just whatever you put in that churns out. So you need to know what are you putting in. And that's where your understanding of estimation and this metrics just becomes useful. So you have other things like control chart that gives you the, how are you doing? Are you behind time? Are you, the middle line is like the status quo. And if you were to go very close to the middle line, the dots are all very close to the middle line, which means you are most likely to deliver on time. But if you have too much of variance, obviously that's going to affect your delivery cycles. So that's basically what control chart is. It's basically to help you to look for trends. And you've got your cumulative flow diagram to see how much of work is in the to-do, how much of work is in the in progress, and how much the work is actually being done. So that helps a bit of understanding. I'm in my last couple of slides now. One thing that I realized that I saw the Excel from Mr. Ghana who sent me, I think yesterday, I realized that you have many streams of operations, many streams going on. And these streams are best represented in Jira as components because you really want to incorporate various functional units in your team. For example, you may think that, even the finance guy should be involved. They should have some sync with what we're doing because our release is going to be important for them to know to invoice the client because every release comes with a billing cycle, for instance. So that is where you use components, where you integrate other functional units into your Jira instance. Now, this becomes interesting because your Jira now basically amplifies the entire team, not just your team, but other finance and so on, your IT team, your deployment team. So you can do that actually in Jira. You can actually view that. And if you can see my slides here, it says, you have the various swim lanes by different teams. My second last slide. Basically, what I'm saying is, whatever you're doing, you have to think about a few things. How do you set up, whether it's a release that you're looking at, whether it's the team management you're looking at, whether it's a functional unit you're looking at. All these three are different guidelines I typically use to share how do you structure your instance of your Jira. And the last slide, I would say, what does it mean? I know many of us here are project managers. And seriously, if you know the Agile manifesto, the principles, the most important thing it talks about is authentic human communication. It talks about collaborating with customers and teammates. It talks about delivering solutions, not hyper detailed documentation and too much of processes that waste time and rigid structures. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you configure your Jira instance well, it must and should support increasing in communication, improving visibility among your team and stakeholders. You should also allow your team to scale and obviously also allow you to take charge. And the last word, if I may, to leave everyone here is if you structure your team, your Jira instance and your Agile implementation well, you have a self-governing team that is highly empowered. Now, with that, I end my session. I think I took a bit more time than I should. Sorry about that. And yes, we can take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sanat. That was quite a good overview. Guys, any question?
Yeah, so Dr. Senate, is Kenny here.
Sure.
So you mentioned about that we have to map the workflow into Jira. So is it mean that it is better for us to standardize our workflow for the team first before we really use Jira?
I would think so, because if you have not thought about a workflow, and maybe the other question I should even ask you, is there a need to even have a workflow? If you think there is, it's important to have some sort of streamlining, then yes, because I'm not a great fan of workflow myself. And coming from an agile hat, we always say that, additional workflow and processes are just waste of time. But sometimes you need it, right? And if you really need it, and you're convinced you need it, and you can't do without, then yes, map that into Jira.